Emma sat by her bedside, hands clasped tightly, eyes shut. "Please, let us find a way," she whispered. The room was dim, lit only by a small lamp that cast soft shadows on the walls. Her prayers were a nightly ritual, a thread of hope she clung to amidst the growing darkness surrounding her mother, Sarah. Sarah, a once vibrant woman, now moved slowly, her eyes clouded and vacant. She sat in the worn-out armchair by the window, her fingers gently tracing the fabric. "Emma, come sit with me," she called softly. Emma crossed the small room, each step echoing her silent plea for a miracle. "How are you feeling today, Mom?" she asked, kneeling beside her. "Some days are better than others," Sarah replied, a faint smile touching her lips. "But I see less and less, Emma. It scares me." Emma swallowed hard, forcing a smile. "We'll find a way, Mom. We always do." That night, as Emma drifted into sleep, she dreamt vividly. She stood barefoot on a hill, dressed in white, singing with all her heart. The sky was a deep blue, and a gentle breeze carried her voice far and wide. Below, a crowd gathered, clapping and cheering, their faces filled with joy. And there, among them, was Sarah, her eyes clear and bright, beaming with pride. The dream filled Emma with a sense of warmth and purpose. As the morning light filtered through the curtains, she woke with renewed determination. "I will sing in the town square," she decided aloud, her voice firm. "I'll earn the money we need for Mom's treatment." School that day was a blur. Emma's thoughts were far from the classroom, her mind occupied with plans and hopes. Her teacher, Miss Anderson, noticed her distraction. "Emma, is everything all right?" she asked during a break. "I'm fine, Miss Anderson," Emma replied, trying to sound convincing. After school, Emma rushed home, her heart pounding with a mix of anxiety and excitement. She changed into her favorite sundress, the one that always made her feel a little more confident. She grabbed the old cookie tin she had kept since childhood, now empty and waiting to be filled with coins and bills. "Where are you going, sweetheart?" Sarah asked, hearing the door creak open. "I'm going to sing in the square, Mom. I need to try," Emma answered, her voice steady. Sarah's face softened with worry and pride. "Be careful, Emma. And remember, you have a gift. Let it shine." The town square was busy with the usual weekday bustle. People hurried past, lost in their own worlds. Emma found a spot near the shopping center and took a deep breath. Placing the cookie tin at her feet, she began to sing. Her voice started soft, almost timid, but gradually grew stronger. She sang songs that spoke to her heart, hoping they would touch others too. Passers-by slowed down, some stopping to listen, but most continued on their way, indifferent. Emma sang 3 songs, her voice unwavering, but the tin remained almost empty. Her heart sank, but she refused to give up. As she finished her last song, a security guard approached, his expression stern. "What's going on here?" he demanded. "I'm just singing, sir," Emma replied quietly. "I need the money." "Go home, kid," he said, not unkindly. "This isn't the place for that." Emma nodded, her eyes downcast. She picked up the tin, now heavier with disappointment than coins, and walked away. But she didn't head home. Instead, she went to the riverbank, where the air was fresh and the sound of the water offered some comfort. She found a spot under a large tree and started singing again, her voice mingling with the rustling leaves and flowing water. A few couples stopped to listen, and some even threw coins into the tin. Emma sang until the sun dipped below the horizon, earning a few euros, barely enough to make a difference. But as she walked home through the quiet streets, she felt a glimmer of hope. It wasn't much, but it was a start. Tomorrow, she whispered to herself, I will try again. Emma entered the small apartment, the warmth of the day still lingering. Sarah greeted her with a weary smile. How did it go? Emma hugged her mother tightly. We'll get there, Mom, one step at a time. As the night embraced them, Emma felt a quiet resolve settle in her heart. The dream of the hill and the cheering crowd remained vivid in her mind, a beacon of hope guiding her through the darkness. The next morning, the sun cast a golden hue over the town, and Emma prepared herself for another day. She filled her cookie tin with hope rather than coins and walked toward the riverbank. Her voice, pure and unwavering, resonated with the soft murmur of the flowing water. You're back, a familiar voice called out. It was Miss Anderson, Emma's teacher, carrying a bag of groceries. Emma nodded, her determination evident. I can't give up, Miss Anderson. I have to do this for my mum. Miss Anderson smiled warmly, placing a few coins in the tin. Keep singing, Emma. You have a gift. As the day progressed, more people stopped to listen, but their contributions were meager. Emma sang song after song, her voice carrying the weight of her hopes and fears. She was in the middle of a poignant ballad when she noticed a man in an expensive suit standing at a distance, watching her intently. David, a wealthy businessman, had been walking by when Emma's voice caught his attention. He recognized the raw talent and the desperation in her eyes. As the last note faded, he approached her. You're very talented, he said, his voice steady and calm. Emma looked up, surprised by the compliment. Thank you, she replied, her eyes scanning his well-tailored suit. I need to earn some money. David nodded, his expression thoughtful. I might be able to help you with that. How about a job singing at my bar? Emma's eyes widened in disbelief. Really? You would do that? Yes, David confirmed, handing her his business card. Come by the bar tonight. We'll discuss the details. Emma clutched the card tightly, her heart racing with anticipation. She hurried home to share the news with Sarah. Mum, I met a man today, Emma began, her voice trembling with excitement. He offered me a job singing at his bar. Sarah looked up, her eyes clouded with both hope and caution. Are you sure about this, Emma? We don't know him. I know, Mom, Emma said, sitting beside her, but we have to take a chance. It's our only hope. Sarah sighed, reaching out to hold Emma's hand. All right, sweetheart. Let's see where this takes us. That evening, Emma arrived at the bar, a quaint place with a rustic charm. The neon sign flickered softly, casting a warm glow over the entrance. She took a deep breath and stepped inside, her heart pounding. David greeted her with a welcoming smile. I'm glad you came, Emma nodded, trying to steady her nerves. Thank you for this opportunity. Let's get you set up, David said, leading her to the small stage. I want you to sing a few songs, just like you did by the river. Emma took her place on the stage, the spotlight illuminating her figure. She closed her eyes, letting the music flow through her. Her voice filled the bar, capturing the attention of the patrons. They watched in awe as she poured her soul into each note. When she finished, the bar erupted in applause. David approached the stage, his eyes reflecting admiration. That was incredible, Emma. Emma smiled, feeling a sense of accomplishment. Thank you. David gestured toward a table. Let's sit and talk. They sat down and David explained the terms of the job. You'll sing here 3 nights a week. In return, I'll make sure you're well compensated. Emma's eyes filled with gratitude. I can't thank you enough. David waved off her thanks. Just keep singing, Emma. That's all the thanks I need. As Emma walked home that night, the neon lights fading into the distance, she felt a renewed sense of purpose. She had a job, a way to help her mother, and a reason to keep fighting. The path ahead was still uncertain, but with David's help, she felt more hopeful than ever. When she entered the apartment, Sarah was waiting, her expression anxious. "How did it go?" Emma beamed, holding up the business card. "It went great, Mom. I have a job." Sarah's eyes filled with tears of relief. "Oh, Emma, I'm so proud of you." Emma hugged her mother tightly, whispering, "We're going to get through this, Mom. I promise." The days turned into weeks, and Emma settled into her new routine. Singing at the bar brought in enough money to start saving for Sarah's treatment, and the change in her mother's condition was evident. Sarah's eyes, once dull and lifeless, began to regain their spark. One evening, as Emma was preparing for another night at the bar, she overheard a heated argument outside. She peeked through the window to see David confronting a group of men. "I told you, I'm not interested in your offers," David said firmly, his voice laced with frustration. "You're making a mistake," one of the men retorted. "This could be good for business." "I don't need your kind of business," David snapped, turning away. Emma watched as the men left, a sense of unease settling over her. She knew there was more to David than he let on, but she also knew he was her best chance to help her mother. As she stepped onto the stage that night, Emma's voice carried not just the weight of her hopes, but also the growing tension surrounding her new benefactor. She sang with a fervor that captivated the audience, each note a testament to her determination and the challenges she faced. In the dim light of the bar, David watched her perform, his mind racing with thoughts of the promises he had made and the shadows of his own past. Emma's journey was just beginning, and so was his struggle to keep his word. The night ended with applause and a promise of better days ahead. As Emma's popularity grew, she became known as Nightingale, her voice drawing more patrons to the bar each night. Her performances were electric, filled with emotion and raw talent that captivated everyone who listened. But beneath the surface, Emma carried a heavy burden. One evening after her set, David approached Emma as she was packing up her things. "Emma, can we talk for a moment?" Emma looked up, surprised by his serious tone. "Of course, David. What's on your mind?" They sat at a quiet table in the corner of the bar. David leaned in, his expression earnest. "I can see that you're carrying a lot on your shoulders. What's really going on, Emma?" Emma hesitated, her eyes dropping to her hands. "It's my mom. She's losing her sight and the treatment is so expensive. I don't know how we're going to afford it." David's face softened with understanding. "Why didn't you tell me earlier? My uncle is a renowned microsurgeon. He might be able to help." Emma's eyes widened in surprise. "Really? But I can't ask for more than you've already given." "Nonsense," David said firmly. "I promise to help you, and I mean it. Let me talk to my uncle. We'll get your mum the treatment she needs." Tears welled up in Emma's eyes, but she blinked them back, refusing to let them fall. "Thank you, David. You have no idea what this means to me." David smiled, placing a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "It's going to be okay, Emma. We'll take care of this." With David's help, Sarah was soon moved to a clinic where she could receive the treatment she desperately needed. Emma kept the true of the assistance a secret, not wanting her mother to worry about the cost or the source of the help. One afternoon, as Emma was leaving the clinic, a man approached her. He was rough-looking, with a scar running down his cheek, his eyes cold and piercing. "You're the Nightingale, aren't you?" Emma took a step back, alarmed by the man's appearance. "Yes, I am. Can I help you?" "You need to stay away from David," the man growled. Emma frowned, confused and wary. "I don't know what you're talking about. Please, leave me alone." The man grabbed Emma's arm, his grip surprisingly strong. "Listen to me. You're going to help me ruin him. David needs to lose everything, starting with you." Emma pulled her arm free, her heart pounding. "I don't have time for this," she said, hurrying away. That evening, as Emma was leaving the bar after another successful performance, she couldn't shake the man's words. She walked briskly, her mind racing with questions. Suddenly, she heard footsteps behind her. Before she could react, the man from earlier grabbed her, pressing a cloth over her mouth. The pungent smell of chemicals filled her nostrils, and she struggled briefly before everything went black. When Emma regained consciousness, she found herself in a dimly lit, unfamiliar room. Her hands were bound, and she felt groggy from the effects of the drug. Panic surged through her as she tried to piece together what had happened. The man stood nearby, watching her with a cold expression. "I told you to stay away from David," he said, his voice filled with venom. "But you didn't listen. Now you're going to help me destroy him." Emma's heart raced, her mind frantic. "Why are you doing this? What do you want from me?" The man approached her slowly, his gaze intense. "David ruined my life. He took everything from me. Now I'm going to make sure he loses everything he cares about, starting with you." Emma struggled against her restraints, desperate to break free. "You're wrong. David has been nothing but kind and helpful. You're the one who's dangerous." The man's expression darkened. "You don't know the half of it, but you will." As the man turned away, Emma's mind raced, searching for a way out of this nightmare. The man's expression darkened. "You don't know the half of it, but you will." As the man turned away, Emma's mind raced, searching for a way out of this nightmare. The man returned with a camera and set it up, pointing it directly at Emma. He looked at her with a twisted smile. "This is going to be fun," he sneered. Emma's heart pounded. "What are you doing?" The man didn't answer. He pressed record and approached Emma, grabbing her by the hair and pulling her up. "Smile for the camera," he said, before delivering a hard slap across her face. Emma cried out in pain, her cheek burning. "Stop! Please!" He ignored her pleas, instead kicking her in the stomach. Emma doubled over, gasping for breath. The man laughed, a cruel, mocking sound. "This is for Jack and David. They need to know the price of defying us." Emma's mind reeled. "Who is Jack?" The man laughed again, harsher this time. "You really don't know, do you? Jack is David's boss. He controls everything. And now I've found out you're important to him." Emma's eyes widened in shock. "But why? Why are you doing this?" The man grabbed her by the throat, lifting her slightly off the ground. "Because David turned down our deal. This is the price for defiance." He released her, and Emma collapsed to the floor, coughing and struggling to breathe. The man took out a knife, twirling it menacingly. "You've got a lovely voice. Maybe I should take your throat. That would be amusing, don't you think?" Emma's heart raced with terror as the man approached, knife glinting in the dim light. Just as he pressed the blade to her neck, the door to the room burst open with a deafening crash, dust filling the air. Emma and her captor turned towards the noise. The wooden door had splintered under the force of the impact, and through the settling dust, figures emerged. The man cursed and tightened his grip on the knife. "Stay back," he shouted, but his voice wavered with uncertainty. Emma's vision was blurry from tears and pain, but she could make out the silhouettes of two men. One of them stepped forward, his voice cutting through the chaos. "Drop the knife, now." The man holding Emma tensed and immediately pulled her closer, the knife pressed against her neck. "Stay back, I'll slit her throat," he shouted, his voice wavering with desperation. David, standing in the doorway, took a step forward, his eyes locked on the kidnapper. "Frank, it's over. I've already dealt with the others outside. Let her go, and maybe you'll get out of this alive." Frank's grip tightened, and Emma winced as the blade pressed harder against her skin. "You think I'm scared of you, David? You're the reason I'm in this mess." Another man, the stranger who had burst in with David, raised his hands in a placating gesture. "Frank, listen, you don't want to do this. You let her go, and we'll give you a chance. We promise." Frank's eyes darted between David and the stranger, his resolve wavering. "You promise? Just like you promised everything else?" The stranger nodded, his voice calm and authoritative. "Yes, Frank, let her go. You have my word." Frank's hand shook as he looked at Emma, then back at the stranger. I can't go back. They'll kill me." The stranger took a step closer. "No one needs to die today, Frank. Let her go." For a moment, the room was tense, silent, except for Emma's ragged breathing. Then, in a sudden move, Frank pushed Emma away, sending her stumbling toward the stranger. He bolted for the door, desperation fueling his escape. The stranger caught Emma, steadying her as David took off after Frank. Emma's vision blurred, her strength leaving her as the adrenaline faded. "David," she whispered, before everything went dark. David sprinted after Frank, his focus sharp. He heard the sound of footsteps pounding on the wooden floorboards ahead of him. As he reached the front door, he saw Frank disappearing into the night. David didn't hesitate. He followed, the chill of the night air biting at his skin. "Stop, Frank!" David shouted, his voice echoing in the quiet street. But Frank didn't stop. He glanced over his shoulder, panic in his eyes, and kept running. David pushed himself harder, closing the distance between them. Frank stumbled on a loose cobblestone, giving David the opening he needed. He tackled Frank to the ground, both of them rolling on the cold pavement. "Get off me!" Frank yelled, struggling against David's grip. David pinned Frank's arms, his breath coming in heavy pants. "It's over, Frank. There's no escape." Frank's eyes filled with tears of frustration and fear. "You ruined everything, David. You and your promises." David's expression softened, but he kept his hold firm. "This isn't the way, Frank. We can work something out, but not like this." Meanwhile, back in the room, the stranger gently laid Emma down, checking her pulse. Her breathing was shallow, but she was stable. He sighed in relief and pulled out his phone, dialing quickly. "We need medical assistance at the location now," he said into the phone, his voice calm but urgent. "One victim, unconscious but stable." He hung up and turned his attention back to Emma, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "You're safe now," he murmured, more to himself than to her. When Emma awoke, she found herself in a hospital room, the sterile smell of disinfectant filling her nostrils. Her head throbbed, and she felt disoriented. The room was dim, with only the soft glow of a bedside lamp illuminating the space. She glanced around and saw a man sitting next to her, his head resting on the bed, holding her hand as he slept. Emma tried to sit up, wincing at the pain in her ribs. The movement woke the man, and he immediately straightened, his eyes filled with concern. "Emma, you're awake. Are you all right? Do you feel any pain?" Emma blinked, trying to focus on his face. Who are you?" Before he could respond, David entered the room, having heard the commotion. He approached the bed quickly, relief washing over his features. "Emma, thank God you're okay." Emma looked between the two men, confusion etched on her face. "David. Who is he? Who is Jack?" The man next to her hesitated, his eyes meeting David's. "I'm Jack," he said slowly. David stepped closer, placing a reassuring hand on Jack's shoulder. "Emma, it's time you knew the truth. You've been kept in the dark for too long, and you deserve to know everything." Jack took a deep breath, his voice steady but filled with emotion. "Emma, I'm your father." Emma's eyes widened in shock. "No, that can't be. My father disappeared before I was born." Jack nodded, his expression pained. "I had to disappear to protect you and your mother. I was involved with the mafia, and when our gang was dismantled, our enemies came after me. I had to go into hiding to keep you both safe." Tears welled up in Emma's eyes as she tried to process this revelation. "You left us to protect us?" Jack nodded, reaching out to gently stroke her hair. "I'm so sorry, Emma. I had no choice. If I stayed, you and your mother would have been in constant danger." Emma's emotions bubbled to the surface and she began to cry, the weight of her childhood struggles finally catching up to her. "You left us alone. Do you have any idea what that did to us?" Jack's own eyes filled with tears as he leaned closer. "I know, Emma. I know, and I'm so sorry. I thought of you every single day. I missed you so much, but I couldn't risk coming back." David watched the exchange, his heart heavy with empathy for both of them. He moved to the other side of the bed, gently placing his hand on Emma's. "He's telling the truth, Emma. Jack did everything he could to protect you, even if it meant breaking his own heart." Emma looked at David, then back at Jack. The anger and hurt she felt were palpable, but so was the longing for the father she never knew. She searched Jack's eyes for any hint of deceit and found none. Jack continued, his voice breaking. "When I heard you were in danger, I had to come back. I couldn't stay away any longer, not when you needed me." Emma's tears flowed freely now, and she leaned into Jack's embrace, her sobs shaking her small frame. "I needed you, Dad. I needed you all these years." Jack held her tightly, his own tears falling. "I know, sweetie. I'm here now. I won't leave you again." David stepped back, giving them a moment of privacy. He watched as years of pain and separation melted away in their embrace. It was a bittersweet reunion, filled with both sorrow and joy. As Jack stroked Emma's hair, he whispered apologies and reassurances, trying to make up for lost time. Emma clung to him, her cries gradually subsiding as the warmth of his presence calmed her. Finally, Emma pulled back slightly, looking up at Jack with red-rimmed eyes. "Promise me you'll stay." Jack nodded, his voice firm. "I promise, Emma. I'm here to stay. We'll face everything together from now on." Emma nodded, a small, tentative smile breaking through her tears. "Okay, Dad." As Emma lay back, exhausted but relieved, she felt the heavy burden of her past lift slightly. She had a father now, a complicated but real connection she thought she'd never have. The room fell into a peaceful silence, the air filled with a newfound sense of hope and the promise of a brighter future. The next morning, Emma awoke to the sound of the hospital room door opening. Her mother, Sarah, rushed in, her eyes red and swollen from crying. She immediately enveloped Emma in a tight hug, her voice breaking with emotion. "Emma, my darling, I was so scared. I thought I'd lost you." Emma held onto her mother, her own tears threatening to spill over. "I'm okay, Mom. I'm here." Sarah pulled back slightly, cupping Emma's face in her hands. "You have no idea how relieved I am to see you safe." I couldn't bear the thought of losing you." As they hugged again, a voice called from the doorway. "Sarah." Sarah froze, her breath catching in her throat. Slowly, she turned around to see Jack standing in the doorway. Her eyes widened in disbelief. "Jack," she whispered, her voice trembling. Jack took a tentative step forward. "Yes, it's me." Sarah shook her head, her hand covering her mouth. "This can't be real. You can't be here." Jack moved closer, his eyes filled with sorrow and regret. "It's real, Sarah. I'm here." Sarah reached out, her fingers trembling as they touched Jack's arm, needing the physical contact to believe her eyes. When she felt his warmth, she broke down, sobbing uncontrollably. Jack pulled her into his arms, holding her tightly as tears streamed down his face. "I thought you were dead," Sarah cried. "You left and never came back. I thought I'd lost you forever." Jack's voice was choked with emotion. "I'm so sorry, Sarah. I had to go on one last mission and I couldn't come back. It was too dangerous. I had to protect you and Emma." Sarah pulled back, anger and hurt flashing in her eyes. "You think that justifies leaving us? Do you have any idea what we've been through?" Jack nodded, his eyes filled with regret. "I know, and I'm so sorry. I never wanted to hurt you. I thought I was doing the right thing." Sarah's voice was a mix of anger and desperation. "The right thing? You left us alone, Jack. Emma and I needed you." Jack looked over at Emma, who was watching the exchange with wide eyes. He placed a calming hand on Sarah's shoulder. "We need to be strong for Emma. She needs us now more than ever." Emma, her voice shaky, interrupted. "Dad, are you going to stay with us now? Are we going to be a family?" Jack walked over to Emma's bedside, taking her hand in his. "Yes, Emma, I'm here to stay. No more running, no more hiding. Whatever happens, we'll face it together as a family." Sarah looked at Jack, her eyes searching his for any sign of doubt. When she found none, she nodded slowly. "All right, Jack, but you need to understand this won't be easy. We have a lot to work through." Jack squeezed Emma's hand and then turned to Sarah, his expression earnest. "I know, Sarah. I'm ready to do whatever it takes. We will rebuild our family no matter what." Emma, overwhelmed with emotion, looked at her parents. "I've wanted this for so long. I don't care about the past. I just want us to be together." Jack and Sarah moved closer to Emma, each taking one of her hands. The room was filled with a sense of unity, a promise of a new beginning. Jack's voice was filled with determination. "From now on, we face everything together. We build a future together as a family." Sarah nodded, tears still in her eyes but a small smile forming on her lips. "Together," Emma smiled, feeling a warmth she hadn't felt in a long time. "Together." As they stood there, united in their resolve, the heavy burden of the past seemed to lift. They knew the road ahead would be challenging, filled with the need for healing and understanding. But they also knew they would face it together, stronger than before. The door to the future was open, and they were ready to step through it as a family, determined to rebuild their lives and their bonds, no matter what challenges lay ahead. Weeks passed, and Sarah's vision gradually began to improve with the specialized treatment arranged by David's uncle. Each day brought a small victory. Shapes became clearer, colors more distinct. Sarah was cautiously optimistic, but the fear of losing her sight completely still lingered. "Mum, how are your eyes today?" Emma asked one morning, sitting by her bedside. Sarah smiled, her eyes focusing on Emma's face. "A little better. I can see you more clearly now." Emma's heart swelled with hope. "That's wonderful, Mum. We're getting there. Meanwhile, Emma's singing career was gaining momentum. Her story, a young girl singing to save her mother's sight, caught the attention of local media. They came to the bar to interview her, and soon, Emma was a name people recognized. One evening, after a particularly moving performance, a journalist approached her. "Emma, your voice is incredible, and your story is so inspiring. What are your plans for the future?" Emma thought for a moment, her eyes drifting to her parents who were standing together, watching her with pride. "I want to enroll in a conservatory and study music formally. It's something I've always dreamed of." Jack and Sarah exchanged a look, both nodding in agreement. "We'll support you every step of the way, Emma," Jack said, his voice filled with conviction. Back at home, the family gathered around the dining table, a sense of normalcy returning to their lives. "I've found a great conservatory, not too far from here," Emma said, showing them the brochure. "They have an audition process, and I think I can make it." Sarah took the brochure, her vision now clear enough to read the fine print. "This looks perfect, Emma. You should go for it." Jack nodded, his eyes meeting Emma's. "You have the talent, and now you have the opportunity. Don't let anything hold you back." Emma felt a warmth spreading through her. "I won't. Thank you both for believing in me." The next few weeks were a whirlwind of preparation. Emma practiced tirelessly, perfecting her pieces for the audition. Jack and Sarah were there for every step, offering encouragement and support. The day of the audition arrived, and as Emma stood backstage, nerves gnawing at her, she felt a hand on her shoulder. She turned to see Jack, his expression calm and reassuring. "You've got this, Emma. Just remember why you're here." Emma nodded, taking a deep breath. "I will. Thank you, Dad." She stepped onto the stage, the lights bright and the auditorium filled with a hushed anticipation. She closed her eyes, took another deep breath, and began to sing. Her voice, filled with emotion and determination, echoed through the hall, captivating everyone who heard it. When she finished, there was a moment of silence before the audience erupted in applause. Emma looked out and saw her parents standing, clapping with tears in their eyes. She knew, in that moment, that no matter what happened, she had already won. After the audition, the family gathered outside, the tension finally breaking. "You were amazing, Emma," Sarah said, hugging her tightly. "I'm so proud of you." Jack nodded, his eyes shining with pride. "Whatever happens, remember this moment. You've come so far and we're just getting started." A week later, Emma received the acceptance letter from the conservatory. She read it aloud, her voice trembling with excitement. "I got in! They accepted me!" Sarah and Jack hugged her, their joy palpable. "This is just the beginning, Emma," Sarah said. "You're going to do great things." As they celebrated, Emma felt the weight of the past lifting. Her family was together, her mother's sight was improving, and her dreams were within reach. They had faced so much, but they had done it together, and that made all the difference.